folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. I want to talk today about something that is a common misconception, a common error amongst prepping survivalists, or even just people, especially that aren't prepping survivalists, but that, acknowledge that there may come a day when the excrement may hit the fan and what their plan is to survive. And I'm going to tell you, if you do this, or if this is your plan, you're probably going to die. Just plain and simple. Before I get started, I want to mention something. I don't get any money for this at all, but it's just something that I really like, and I think it's very helpful for this lifestyle. I wanted to pass the information on to you, and it's this magazine. Just received this today. It's the newest edition of Backwoods Home Magazine. Some of you get this, and I would assume that you're going to be saying the same thing as me, as it is the best. There's a lot of new kind of pioneer, survival, prepper, even homesteading magazines out on the market today. Back when I first kind of started into this world, there was really only just 2 or 3, and now there's a lot. This is an old one, meaning it's been around for a long time, and I think by far it's still the best. It's Backwoods Home Magazine, the practical ideas for self-reliant living. And it covers everything from prepping to homesteading to self-defense, firearms, survival, food preservations, primitive living. And it's a good magazine, thick magazine. I really like it. And it's not terribly expensive. It used to be, I think it came out 6 times a year. And then they closed down shop for a while and were only doing digital. And then the son picked it back up from the father that started it, and now it's quarterly, which, I wish it was monthly, but it's a good magazine, and I recommend it, okay? And I think that if you look at it and read it, you will admit that it's a very good magazine. Again, I'm not getting anything for promoting this, but I would recommend doing it. And I don't know if they're still running it, but I just renewed a subscription, and they were running a sale on renewing the subscription, and it was, I think, less than $15, which I thought was quite reasonable, especially for the amount of information that is crammed into those magazines every month. All right, on with the show. I have heard this most of my life, especially adult life. I've been involved in bushcraft, primitive survival skills since I was really probably 12 or 13. Grew up around farm life. And I've been involved in what I would call homesteading and even off-grid living for well over a decade now. Have even at one point lived completely off the grid with almost no modern conveniences at all. Did everything quite primitively for quite a while. So I do have some experience with this, and what I hear from so many people, whether they're not considered themselves a prepper, or maybe they are, maybe they're a novice, and even ones that are more advanced, is that when the doo-doo hits the fan, they're not worried about it, because they're just going to go out here in these woods, and they're going to survive. They're going to go out there and they're going to live off of deer, and they're going to live off of fish and rabbits and berries and nuts and all these mushrooms and wonderful things that grow out in nature. And it's going to be like some, Hollywood movie or a reality TV show for them. And they're just going to survive. And that's their plan. And I'm here to tell you, if that is your plan, you're just not going to last very long. Even the most expert of survivalists, and I don't consider myself, I'm fairly knowledgeable, and I know how to go out and survive in the woods, and I've done it for days and even a few weeks at a time. But it's not, even all of those experts, they will tell you that living that way is only to get you by until you get to a normal life, because you just can't survive that way for very long. And that's if you're just the only one doing it. If everybody's doing it, everyone in the country is doing it, or if we live in kind of a rule without law, or at least people around us realize that things are becoming so broken down that certain laws no longer apply, and they're just going to go out and they're going to hunt whenever they want to hunt and whatever they want to hunt or fish or whatever. It wouldn't take very long for, well, the things that you're hunting for to keep you alive are going to be gone. I hear it a lot from people that especially that live in the city. We're just going to go out there in the country and we're going to hunt us some deer. We're going to go fishing. We're going to get all them squirrels and rabbits. Yes, people here in the Ozarks eat squirrels and rabbits. I do not anymore, but it's a common food source around here. The thing is if everyone's doing it and it's completely unregulated, it won't take very long for the wildlife to completely dry up. It's just not. There have been ample amount of examples in history where people have overhunted an area, and very rapidly the animals either were all hunted or they moved out of the area. Animals aren't stupid, and they can easily tell when their habitat is being overrun with people. And when they see that, they're going to get out of there. They're going to move away. With fish, it's going to dry up too. Because here's the thing. Especially if you talk to most old timers around here, they'll tell you there's not nearly as many fish in these waters as there were when they were kids. And they're certainly no longer the big ones that there once were. I remember my grandfather, there's pictures of my grandfather here in the Ozarks catching fish that are almost as long as he was tall. And those days are gone because they've been fished so heavily. So if your plan is simply that, I remember years ago, and this was probably close to 20 years ago, when I really first started getting serious about preparedness and stocking up and self-sufficient living. And I talked to a guy, and he was a Marine, and a former Marine. And I kind of thought, being a former Marine, he would be all on board with this concept of survivalist prepping. And he's like, I'm not going to do any of that kind of stuff. I'm not going to put food away and stock up. I said, yeah, but what if something bad happens? What are you going to do? He's like, I'll just take it from everybody else, which is another common thing that you'll hear. So if your plan consists of going out in the woods and surviving, or taking it from other people, I would say your life expectancy is going to be really small. Because if you're going to take it from other people, no matter how well trained you are, people will fight to the death to defend what they have. I know I would. I would fight to the death to defend my family. And if it's in a true SHTF, it's not just about food anymore. It's about the food that is going to keep my family alive. So these are two common things that I hear quite often, that if that is part of your plan, you really need to kind of work on your plan. Now, as far as hunting and survival and foraging skills, I believe everyone ought to have at least the basics. Yes, you need to know how to go out here in these woods, and you need to know how to forage for food and for things that have medicinal value. Here's the thing, though. It's not easy. I've been doing it for years. And just the other day, I walked through these woods for almost an hour, and I came up empty-handed. And it's mostly because it's the time of the year. Things just aren't growing. Well, what if the time of the year, the time that the SHTF happens is this time of the year? Then what do? Chew on some bark or dead leaves? Because if I had to try to survive in these woods right now, it's going to be really difficult. And the animals, I mean, we live in a very fertile, lush area. I don't know if you can see these trees back here. See this pasture? See, there's a creek right here. There's a field right here. And then that tree right there, that tree line, that's national forest, a large national forest. There's a lot of animals and a lot of wildlife in there. And even at that, it would be very difficult to survive in for a long period of time. This is a very big misconception that people think that you don't need to prep and you don't need to practice skills. It's just going to be like some movie, these movies where the end of times happen and you just go out in the woods and you just all of a sudden become this Rambo survivor man, right? You just all of a sudden know all these skills that you picked up from watching a TV show or for going to Boy Scouts when you were 7 or 8 years old. It just all comes back and you know how to do it and you do it well, and everything works out great, and every snare you set up catches an animal, and every hook you throw in the water comes out a fish, and every time you strike something or rub something together, fire poofs. Well, the real world is it doesn't work that way. Last year, and I try to practice my survival skills often, and I remember last year I went out and it had rained for a while. It was in the fall. It had rained, but it hadn't rained for a couple of days, but everything was still kind of damp. And I went out and I wanted to see how well I could make a fire, starting a fire without matches, without any kind of fire starter, just primitive fire starting. And it took half the day. I got it, but it took half the day. And I'm experienced. Now I've done it much quicker than that, but under the circumstances, I was having a real hard time, and I mean I was digging everywhere, but everything was just really moist. It was really damp. I mean, I was having a hard time finding stuff to start fires with. If I was on the verge of hypothermia, or I was hypothermic to the point that I could die soon, and it took me 4 hours to start a fire, I might die before that fire gets started. So it's the same way with trying to catch food. You set up snares to catch food, little critters. It may take days and days, and you have to set up numerous ones. Usually if I set up snares back when I was doing that, I would set up anywhere between 8 and 12 snares in my area, and it may take several days before I actually catch something. And then when you catch something, it's usually about this big, It's maybe enough for one meal, if that. The point that I'm trying to drive across to you is that knowing survival skills are really good. It's really good to know how to start a fire without any modern tools. It's really good to know how to go out here and forage for everything that's growing and know what you're seeing and what it is and how to use it. It's good to be able to go out here and hunt, especially making the tools to hunt with and snaring an animal. But to do that and that be your plan to survive a long-term thing, that is very naive of you to think that you're going to survive for any length of time doing that. The resources, the natural resources that are out there, especially if everyone's doing that, or if a lot of people are doing that, they're going to dry up fast. So for those of you that say that's your plan, you need to work on it. You need to come up with a real plan. You need to come up with a way to sustainably produce your own food and not just completely depend on going out here in the wild and finding it. That may hold you over for a few days, or you can supplement your diet with that stuff. But you need to be able to produce your own food. And it's always good, and in fact, not just good, it's extremely important to have a food supply already in place. I get this question an awful lot. How much food do I need to have put up? And then why do I need to have that much food put up? I recommend at least on the higher end, I recommend 2 years of food put back. That should be your goal. 2 years of food put back. And the reason why you want 2 years of food is because if your plan, and it should be, your plan should be to grow your own food, to be able to grow enough food, to raise enough food, to hunt, forage, all those combined, because those are sustainable methods to have food. Opening a can of beans that you got at Walmart that now no longer exists because the excrement has hit the fan, that's not sustainable. Having tomatoes that you planted and replanted each year, and harvesting their fruit and then using their seeds to plant more, that is sustainable. So The goal is to eventually get to that point where you're in a sustainable cycle of producing food. Most people are not there right now, and it takes time to get there. You're not just going to go out this year. If you make a decision this year we're going to be completely sustainable, independent on our food. We're going to grow, raise everything that we need to eat. You probably are going to, it's probably not going to work out. I don't want to say you're going to fail, but it's probably unlikely unless you have been building up to that all these many years. I think that if you're really, really devoted to it and very dedicated and in an SHTF where your life is truly dependent on it, I would think average person really would be. That in a 2-year time period, if you work really, really hard at it, if you're prepared, that in 2 years you can probably get your garden and get your little homestead to the point that you're really kind of living off of that land when it comes to your food. So that's where the 2 years of food storage comes into play. You build up to 2 years, you have that put away, and you can use it for short-term emergencies, but try to always keep it topped off to where you have 2 years. And then if the big one ever hits, and we're pretty much knocked back to the Stone Age, or whatever it is, and it's a long-term thing, that 2 years hopefully will be enough time for you to get your property, your land, your homestead, your system around you up to the place to where you're producing enough for you and your family to live off of. And yes, along the way, you can get stuff out of the woods, but it's only really going to be supplemental, or just to hold you over for a few days. It's just not a good idea, folks, to depend on that as your sole plan of survival. And especially those that say they're just going to take it from others, because that plan's probably going to end really quickly. It's not going to be like the movies, folks. While some of these apocalyptic dystopian movies you can get a few good ideas from, I think too much and too many times they paint the wrong picture of reality of what it could possibly be like when, SHTF actually does happen. You're just not going to survive very long if you're just going to go around taking from people. Out here where I live, most everyone has a gun, and when it comes to that time and you show up trying to take their stuff, you're just not going to make it. All right, folks, start working on your plans. Practice your food growing. It's very important. There are things happening now and that looks like that they're probably on the horizon over the next few years that's going to become more and more and more and more important for you to be able to grow, produce, raise, harvest, forage, hunt, whatever, your own food. So start on it this year and really, really start honing your skills. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.